Hello folks, this is Capandball from Hungary, in beautiful bright Hunglish language, your favorite gun channel on YouTube. I have two interesting 19th century military rifles from you today, from the beginning of the breech loading era. The one is a Prussian Dreyse rifle, it's a needle fire rifle, and the other one is the French Chassepot rifle, which is also a needle fire rifle. Let's talk about the development of the two rifles. Nicolaus Dreyse started working on his breech-loading concept in the 1820s. He presented his first model to the Prussian Ministry of War in 1827, and after a long development and trial periods, in 1840 December, the ministry finally made the final decision and ordered 60,000 pieces, and they also offered Dreyse some funds to establish a factory for producing the new rifle. But most of the new rifles were stored in the arsenals in Berlin and Magdeburg. They did not go to the units. And the debut of this rifle was actually against the German people. In 1849, May 6-9, it was used against the rebels protesting against the government. But before we continue, let me thank you for your support. Your donation through Patreon, or buying or authentic American Civil War time cartridge boxes, or paper cartridge formers, or US Arsenal stadias, or powder measures, or rubber printing plates for arsenal bundles, they all help to keep the quality of our channel high. Without you, this would be much more difficult. So thank you very much. The father of the French needle rifle was Antoine Alphonse Chassepot. He was clearly inspired by the most modern army of its age, Moltke's Prussian army. He started working on the breech-loading concept in the 1850s. Seeing the benefits of the bolt-action breech of the Dreyse, he copied and perfected the system. The Prussian performance in the War of 1864 and 66 proved the French that to counter the Prussian threat, the development of the infantry arm was inevitable. The breech loader concept was on trial for a long time here as well, and finally in the August of 1866, the new rifle entered service. Although a large production capacity supported the quick rearmament, it took nearly 3 years to change from muzzle loaders. Well, both rifles are needle-firing breech loaders. However, it is easy to see that the Dreyse is, let's say, a transition from muzzle loader to breech loader, while the Chassepot is rather a transition towards the modern military rifle. The needle rifle system is an early breech-loading system. The heart of the rifle is the needle, an early version of the firing pin, that has to penetrate the cartridge case brought from paper to reach the priming compound, integrated into the cartridge itself. Its rate of fire was 2-3 times more than the rate of fire of the muzzle loaders, and it could be comfortably loaded in kneeling or prone position or behind the cover as well, which is a great advantage.
Here are some 50-meter range tests with the two cartridges made according to the original military specifications. I've been shooting these rifles for a long time now, and although I know that the Chassepot is superior, I also know that the Dreyse can also hit a man-sized target up to 200-300 meters. The Prussian army had the advantage of the long service time behind their rifles, while the French were just getting used to the new system. The Dreyse is a bit clumsy, but it is not especially complicated to operate. In fact, needs much less training than a muzzle loader. The Chassepot is comfortable and surely feels stronger than the Prussian rifle. Action can be hard to close if some paper remains in the chamber, but it still works. I did not have any misfires with any of the rifles during my shooting tests. It was also interesting to see that nearly the entire paper casing of the cartridge left with the gases of the powder through the muzzle.
The most important difference between the two rifles is the caliber itself. When Dreyse designed his rifle, the caliber of a standard infantry arm was between 17 to 18 millimeters, and they fired heavy lead round balls. This was his guideline in selecting the 15.4 millimeter caliber for his concept. The Chassepot has a clear advantage here. The caliber is only 11 millimeters, while the bullet was also lighter, resulting in better ballistics performance and a flatter trajectory. Let's talk a bit about external ballistics. The result of the small caliber and the lighter bullet was the increased range. First, the trajectory of the Chassepot rifle is much flatter, meaning that the ballistic curve of the bullet will cover a much larger portion of the battlefield, but also the maximum range is increased dramatically. A good proof of this are the sights on both rifles. The Chassepot sights are much taller. But to tell you the truth, this range is over-optimistic. By the time both rifles were accepted, the close combat formations were still part of the manuals, so the military leaders were convinced that the rifles will be effective against columns, masses, and squares at larger distances as well. But they were wrong. As from the 1866 war, each army understood that the closed formations have to be broken up on the battlefield to avoid losses.
The bayonet of the Chassepot rifle was also a quite modern design. The yataghan was attached to the muzzle with a rail and a bayonet lock. Much more advanced than the socket bayonet of the Dreyse rifles.
The solution for gas sealing the action is also different. The original model 1841 Dreyse lacked any seals. The face of the bolt was cone-shaped that fitted to the breech and directed the gases away from the face of the shooter. This was later improved by rubber seals in later models, but it was never perfect. A good amount of gases always escaped at the joint of the breech and the bolt. The Chassepot was sealed with an ingenious solution. A rubber seal was compressed by the gas pressures, pushing back a piston that completely sealed the action. This rubber seal had to be replaced time by time, as by the use the rubber hardened and then it lost some gases. But with a fresh, new rubber seal, this concept was completely gas-tight. The heart of the needle rifle is the firing pin or needle. The Dreyse rifles seems to be long and fragile. It is really not how we imagine a firing pin of a modern military rifle to look like, and it is often repeated that this was the weak point of the Prussian rifle. I only partially agree with this. First, it takes much more to break this needle than what we think. The needle serving my rifle is now 5 or 6 years old, and it's okay, it did not break. Of course, it needs some proper care, because the needle penetrates the powder container of the cartridge to reach the priming compound, therefore it is stressed by the burning gases. This is true, but it is very easy to replace, and the soldiers always carried some spare needles in their backpacks. The needle of the Chassepot is shorter and thicker. Well, this concept is much closer to the modern firing pin concept. And as the percussion cap is on the back of the Chassepot cartridge, it is not penetrating into the burning chamber where the powder is exploding, so it will last much longer. Let's compare the two cartridges as well. Both cartridges are paper cartridges, and both hold all the components of the charge, like the black powder charge, the projectile, and the primer as well. This is why we can call them self-contained cartridges. However, there's a great difference in the bullets. The Dreyse bullet has 13.6 mm diameter, it has a raindrop fall. It is called a long blade bullet, and its weight is 33.2 grams. This bullet was much smaller than the bore, so it was inserted in a carton wad called the Spiegel, creating a sabot. So the bullet itself did not engage the rifling directly. Understanding the benefits of the smaller caliber bullets, in the spring of 1870, the transition to a smaller 12 mm 21 gram bullet started, but as large quantities of the old cartridges were on stock, both through actions in the wars of 1870 and 71. The carton wad or Spiegel was the main reason for the long-range inaccuracy of the Dreyse. The muzzle velocity of the long blade was around 300 meters per second, so it was very slow. The trajectory was highly curved. The bullet of the Chassepot rifle was a much better design. It was longer, it had a better ballistic form, and engaged the rifling directly, resulting in increased accuracy. The muzzle velocity of the bullet was also higher. It was around 400 meters per second. However, the French cartridge itself is far more complicated than the Prussian. It needs nearly 3-4 times more to make one French cartridge compared to the Prussian cartridge, and it also needs much more components. There was a great difference in the terminal ballistics as well. In 1868, a French surgeon made experiments with exhumed human bodies to compare the wounds caused by the small caliber Chassepot and the larger caliber Dreyse bullets. The small caliber was under attack by many, as they believed that the stopping power of the larger caliber heavy lead slugs was much better. The tests, in fact, proved the opposite. In all distances, the high-velocity Chassepot round inflicted much severe damage than the slow long-barrel bullets. This was the result of the larger impact velocity and the better energy transfer. The wounds caused by the Chassepot rifle were in fact deadlier than ever in history. A good proof of this are the ballistic gelatin tests. The long blade bullet cuts a straight hole with minimal energy transfer, the entrance and exit wounds are nearly the same in size, and the permanent cavity, the permanent wound channel, is moderate. The Chassepot bullet's effect is much different. It has a large temporary cavity as well, causing a strong damage to the surrounding tissue. Due to this effect, even if the entrance wound was smaller, the exit wound of the Chassepot bullet was nearly 7 to 13 times larger than the entrance wound. The combat experiences shows that this bullet caused explosive displacement of surrounding tissue and bone, horrific wounds, never seen with musket balls. But in 1870-71, both rifles were already obsolete. The metallic cartridge was the future, and many of the main military powers already made the transition, like the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, adopting the center-fire metallic cartridge Werner rifles. The Dreyse rifle reached its limits in development. Its most important drawback was the large caliber. On the other hand, the Chassepot, it was much easier to convert, and the caliber was good as well. This also proved the superiority of the French rifle. But seeing the outcome of the 1870-71 war, we can also understand that it is not enough to have a better rifle. You must have proper training and, more importantly, proper leadership behind it to seize the opportunities offered by the increased firepower. And even if the Chassepot was capable of remarkable long-range accuracy compared to the Dreyse, the firefights were still fought at a distance where the difference between the two rifles vanished. So dear all, thank you very much for watching. If you want more from the military rifles and tactics from the black powder era, please visit the Capandball YouTube channel. Until next time, stay cool and keep your powder dry.